I think Accel is, if not the number one, venture firm in terms of the returns generated, and not only paper returns, but a lot of money returned back to LPs.
Today, with the 3 billion AUM, we try to go as early as possible.
VC is seen as a very business role. You assess people, bet on people, market trends, business plan. It's a very low odds game. Can't be all luck that you just hit it out of the park from the very first investment.
The founder quality is one of the things that we actually focused a lot. Roll up the sleeves and work with founders a lot more. What set of people have the capability to be relentless and look for opportunities, be able to execute on them, be able to get the right team, the right strategy.
I have seen a lot of founders also evolve dramatically.
Recently, Jocko was saying that he's won only 54% of the points that he's played, and he's won 24 Grand Slams.
What happens when, let's say, if you're looking at early stage deal, early stage is very painful.
The big advantage we had is India was starting out.
Subrata, finally, welcome to SparX. I think I had to really chase you a lot over the last 2 years. But as I was preparing for this episode, I looked at a little bit of Accel history and so on. So one is, I think you guys are completing 20 years this year, almost.
Completing 20 years, including Erasmic.
Including Erasmic days.
Yeah.
And
actually, then it is completed.
Right, completed 20 years, right? And Accel has had a pretty storied, I think, journey in India. From whatever I can tell, and it's very difficult to get exact data, but I think Accel is, if not the number one, venture firm in terms of the returns generated, and not only paper returns, but a lot of money returned back to LPs and so on. But you started very small. You mentioned Erasmic, which is a $10 million fund, which was, even at that time, was a relatively modest size fund.
Yeah.
As you look back over the last 20 years, you think there was a big game plan, ambition, or it was just, love of being involved early stage? Like, what was the thought process at that time, now that, this hindsight of 20 years?
So I would say, between Prashant, Mahendran and I, the three people who started Erasmic, I think it was more a passion for doing early stage. And in a way, the history is that Prashant and I, we were actually about to start a company. And that was going to be in data analytics when Dheeraj Rajaram came and pitched Mu Sigma. So we decided not to, be part of the founding team, but help him from outside. But we were, by DNA, we were going to be founders. And we thought maybe the next best thing is to be as close to the founders as possible. And therefore have a smaller fund and, roll up the sleeves and work with founders a lot more. And which is what gives us joy even today. So if you look at how many years now? So 2004 till now, 21 years. All the companies I've done, except for one, which was a Series B company, it's all starting at level 0. Right? So that's where I feel that, it's closer to my heart. And I feel I can contribute the most. So even today, with the 3 billion AUM, we try to go as early as possible.
And I'll come back to, what is it about early stage you like? Because early stage is very painful. It's like almost like, you like that pain. We'll come to that. So you got, Mu Sigma being your very first investment, which became immensely successful. If you again try to recall, was there something you saw in Dheeraj at the time or in the opportunity? It's a very low odds game. It's not, it can't be all luck that, just hit it out of the park from the very first investment.
So on that specific one, I think because Prashant and I, we were thinking about the business, I think we had some familiarity with what it could look like. And then both Prashant, through Netcraft and me through Tawant, we had run services businesses. So we knew that India backend service could actually become fairly large. So we knew on one side. And then when we went and started talking to people about what we could do next, which is before we met Dheeraj, a lot of people pointed us to this specific problem, which is, enterprise has this data and kind of analyzing it with US resources is immensely expensive. So people would at some point give it out to countries like India. So can you build a services company around that? So we had it in our mind. I think what we liked about Dheeraj is he, one, Booz Allen, he was actually advising some of these companies which would be customers. And two, he had actually gone and talked to a few people who, at least on a verbal basis, were willing to give him that outsourced opportunity. So we thought that good complementarity, because we knew how to build and he knew kind of how to sell. So partnering with him would be actually pretty interesting. And he came with good references.
Yeah, I think Dheeraj is IIT Kanpur, and I think I've gotten to know you fairly well. Looks like you have some soft corner for IIT Kanpur folks.
So Dheeraj was not IIT Kanpur.
Oh, he's not. Okay.
This is Dheeraj Rajaram.
Okay.
Not
okay.
your buddy
Pandey,
Dheeraj, not Pandey.
Okay, but you still have a lot of.
Oh, absolutely. I think I've done well with both IIT Kanpur and IIT Delhi.
Okay. Yeah. Is that the reason I brought up IIT Kanpur, and both of us went to IIT Kanpur? I think you had a dramatically better rank than mine, but maybe ahead of my time, so maybe things were a little easier at that time is the only excuse I can give myself. But any thought of being VC at that time? Like, did you, before starting Erasmic at some point?
No. I mean, I don't think I fully understood obviously I had lived in the Valley, so I had pitched to enough VCs. But what does it entail? I don't think we fully understood. It was sort of something interesting that we kind of organically grew into.
Yeah. And you moved back to India in, I think, 2002?
So, 98 is when I moved my family. And then I did a startup which was partly in the US, partly in India. So I would spend 50% of my time in the Valley. So effectively, 2002 beginning is when we moved lock, stock and barrel.
Yeah. I think the other thing I realized going through your background is you're one of the very few VCs with actual PhD in computer science.
I mean, our team has a lot.
Okay.
So there's Shekhar, there's me, and
Shekhar has PhD.
Shekhar has a PhD from Minnesota. So me, and then we had Ajay, who just retired, and then Dinesh, who also just retired.
Yeah.
So 4 of us were PhDs.
Somewhere do you think it makes a difference in the DNA how you approach? So VC is seen as a very business role. You assess people, bet on people, market trends, business plan, and all of that. But being, somewhat research background.
See, I think the big advantage we had is India was starting out. So I don't think people necessarily knew, if a VC would be there. If you look at all the early funds, there was Ashish from Helion, there's Vani and Sudhir that you worked with. A lot of these guys were people who came from a entrepreneurship or product background, right? And across other funds as well. So you would look at an early ecosystem. I think entrepreneurs is actually has a little advantage there. And then once the playing field has been leveled, I think now it is more of the classical VC, which is, consulting, MBA, that kind of stuff is probably pouring in a lot more.
And going back to your early days track record, so you did, I think, Mu Sigma maybe 2005 or so.
2004.
You did Mintra in 2007.
Yeah.
Which thankfully worked out well. Flipkart also 2007 or 8.
2008. Yeah.
These all companies went on to become like category defining by a long shot.
Yeah.
It's when you look back and again, where the luck versus some systematic plan behind it.
It's not systematic plan, but I would say, now looking back, the founder quality is probably one of the things that we actually focused a lot, and that has played out. Right. I would say that you're looking at the crystal ball at 15 years from the date of start. Obviously there'll be a lot of challenges, and sometimes, like in Mintra, what you start and where you end up is like totally different. So who or what set of people have the capability to be relentless and look for opportunities, be able to execute on them, be able to get the right team, right strategy. So I think I still come back right now to can we back the best teams, especially when a new category is forming and a new area is being developed.
So in theory, everyone knows that you have to back the best team. You obviously, as a profession, you do a lot of early stage investment. I also do here and there. It's very difficult to figure out in the early days, if someone is truly backable or not. So both maybe 2-part question then. Recalling early days, what are the specific things you were looking for that, some signal key, if this person behaves this way, talks this thing, or it's a gut feeling, and maybe over a period of time, is it gotten more refined? Can you after 10 minutes or 1 hour or 5 hours say this person is truly backable, irrespective of what the person is doing?
I mean, the good thing is we still need to get a probabilistically high number of companies out. So I don't know if you follow tennis, but recently Joko was saying that he's won only 54% of the points that he's played. So he's just above that 50% mark, and he's won 24 Grand Slams. So for us, I think that ratio is you need to get 20% right. So we get the benefit of not having to get everything right. And if you focus on figuring out, so for me, what happens is roughly about 6 to 9 months after I have invested in or started working with a company, I get a very good sense of is this like a really high quality team or not. So you have to invest that you do whatever you can upfront. But 6-9 months later, you should start doubling down in the right companies. So if you give yourself that kind of time, I think you can actually figure it out.
That's very interesting. Saying as long as you are right about 20% of people, with just 1 out of 5, which means you can be wrong 4 out of 5 times. In some ways, then it's also a forgiving business.
Yeah.
But I mean, still, it's not easy to make consistent return in a VC business over a period of time. So perhaps even that getting 1 into 5 right itself is very hard.
I would say I have got about 1/3 right. So I keep looking at all the companies where I made the call. So there are probably about 30 companies, and I would say by the time I'm done, maybe 10 to 12 of them will get to unicorn plus. So out of 30, between 30 and 40% is what I got right. But even people starting today, where there's a lot more noise, so the signal to noise is much harder. Even if you get 20% right, you'll probably end up very well because the size of the outcomes are slowly increasing.
So let's just say maybe across the years, you try to recall some initial signal, that spark, whatever comes to your mind that you saw this in that person, or maybe Sachin Bini when you first met them.
So Sachin Bini, I vividly remember because we got a lot of soak time, because they came through Abhishek and, they were former colleagues at Amazon.
And if my research is right, you probably said no 3-4 times. Or
I actually never said no, but I was kind of leaning towards that because everybody that I went to talk to co-invest with us was saying no. And even internally, people were saying this is going to be a big money game. You have only a 60 million fund. So how long can you keep up with these guys? So that was the big question. It was not about the team in that case. It was like, can we keep up long enough or will we get kind of wiped out, even though we have identified the right opportunity? But in Sachin and Bini's case, I think two things. One was, between the two of them, one was this outbound guy, who was kind of talking about the vision and how do we change India, change, e-commerce in India. And the other guy was this quiet guy, Bini, who was actually figuring out how these things would actually work on the ground, right? So one was that. And two is just, Sachin's kind of ability to convince you that, you have seen customer service in the US and where we are in India. I will build this company where everybody will be wowed by the way that we kind of treat them and deal with them. So every time he would come back and say, I had told you this, here is another example of what I have done. So we got like a month and a half or something of soak time. And we would meet twice a week because we had very small portfolio. And these guys were starting out, we were starting out. So I guess we were the only interesting VCs in town who continued to show interest in Sachin and Bini. So twice a week they would come over and, Abhishek and me, we would ask them, what have you done in this last week? And every time he would actually tie back to saying, I've told you that I'll give a better experience and this is what I have done this week. So eventually I thought, this is the set of people that are worth backing. I think in your case, what was very evident was, your early co-founders, 2-3 of them I had worked with. So I had some calibration of their qualities. And then I could see the difference between them and you, obviously with the US background, and you was probably slightly, senior to them and that maturity. So that was one very important thing that the others were looking like...
Not a planted question in my podcast. I'm not trying to...
The others were looking like, smart kids. And you were looking like at least this one guy who knows in the room how to be a CEO.
I hope that has not changed in the last 15 years.
So that was one. And I think the other thing that you did, which really impressed me is, we were like the first round, we were putting 100K. And I think you put 75K of your own money.
Right. That's something.
So something like that. And then I said, okay, if this guy, he's moving back to India, big risk, he's kind of going through all of that. and he's putting his own money, looks reasonably smart. I know the other 2-3 guys on the team. So this is actually something worth taking, although we had talked about that idea not being so scalable right up front.
So that was all basically a team bet, is what
It was
saying,
definitely a team bet. And it was like, I keep saying this, but if you're taking large risks, take it on a smaller amount of capital.
That 75K is reminding me, I think 6 months later you called me, you may have forgotten, you said कि Flipkart में 60 lakh, something like that, कि तुम भी 10 lakh डाल दो. And like my basically financial situation at that time was, not exactly, but when I moved back to India, I had about 80 lakhs. So उसमें से 30 lakhs,
40 rupees
वो था 40 rupees था, तो that I put in Myntra. बाकी 50 lakh ऐसे कि वो rainy day का है. But yeah, I wish 75K 50-25 कर देते या कुछ,
But so I guess we have all come out in a plane where we wouldn't have imagined.
Right.
So it's all okay.
Right. And some of the other folks,
so even Dheeraj, I think 2 things happened with Dheeraj. Dheeraj is a absolutely wonderful sales guy. But the day when he met us, that first meeting, he was boarding the plane. He actually had a co-founder who apparently half an hour before he was boarding the plane from Chicago basically called and told him, I'm not in. So this guy said, I can now cancel the trip, but I am here at the airport and I am about to board. So might as well go, right? So he was very shaken up in that first meeting, right? And he was not like even a 50% of his own self. And Prashant and I, we were both like 3 of us met together, and we were almost saying that, this doesn't look good, right? I mean, this is a guy who is kind of looks nervous and it doesn't look like he has any background about India. I mean, he left a long time ago. Maybe he knows the US, but kya karega? I mean, this is like going to be a cross-continent team and he has to run with it. And then we said, okay, actually Ashish was the guy who had recommended that we meet with Dheeraj. And from Prashant's friend circle, this guy Venk Krishnan, who runs Newware. So wo bhi he had recommended. So both of them had met with Dheeraj. So we went and called Ashish saying, we found somebody who's like, not even that strong in his opinion, saying that I actually understand how to do this, and he didn't even look like he can sell anything and all of that. So, but Ashish said, maybe something is wrong. Let me check.
Right.
But would you meet him another time? Sure. I mean, if he's in India, I'd love to meet with him. And next day, we kind of gave him this perspective that we came back thinking this, and then Ashish and Venk thought that you are a completely different DNA. So just take out all your inhibitions and let's talk as if nothing has happened bad. And he told us in the process that my co-founder has left, so I don't know whether I'll be able to start this company at all or not. But it was a different Dheeraj. So I think that doing that extra meeting and spending that extra time always helps.
I'm realizing in 2005, 6, 7, my co-founder leaving was a common pattern. Like I had at least 3 people, back out at the last minute, and 1 guy, after joining after 3 months. So I think उस वक्त the whole ecosystem was such that कि लोगों को पता नहीं था कि this is really wild west.
And I guess when I did my startup Firewide, which was probably this is 99. We were trying to hire this young engineer. So his dad calls me that, he has an offer from a large company, then name it. And I know you've worked at IBM, you have a PhD and all that. He wants to come work with you, but I don't know if this is like a good idea. So I had to sit with the dad first before trying to convince the son. Okay, so actually a lot had changed by the time you started, and then a lot has changed now.
And what about like a little fast forward, when you backed a lot of immensely successful founders, let's say, when you first met Harsha at Swiggy or Girish at Freshdesk, what are the recollections now? What did you see in these guys? Or, Abhiraj at Urban Company?
See, some of the, actually Harsha, I probably met him almost at the point where we had decided. So it was not that very early. I remember, Raghu from Taxi for Sure, we had an early meeting, looked like a great founder, and while that particular opportunity has not panned out, but, he's back at it again. Girish, of course, was completely, I mean, he's like a larger than life today. But even at that time, he was very convincing. He would actually go and talk about what all work he was running like a $30 million business inside Zoho.
Tamil superstar persona.
He slowly kind of expanded it, but even then he would come back and tell us, in this SaaS, which is for mid market, these are the kinds of things that can work. And he looked at Google search volumes and how do you take this prosumer style opportunity and kind of hit it out of the park over a period of time. So very convincing about a very small set of things, right? Where he had a lot of depth and background. So that was that. And then maybe Harsha we talked about. I wasn't too close. So Prashant and Anand kind of did a lot of the early heavy lifting. I could identify, for example, Black Buck. The team came in and we could see that this is the guy who had the real fire in it.
Yeah.
So some of these, I think you get a good sense after the first meeting, but I would suggest continue to meet as many times as possible. And today it's become very hard because the good people get competing term sheets very early. But as much time as you can spend is actually a good.
And is there an element to, one is there's first impressions or, for first 2-3 meetings, but I have seen a lot of founders also evolve dramatically. So is there that also plays out that, maybe today someone not backable, but maybe after 2 years of struggle and really seeing, what the on-ground reality is and that convinces you to change your mind?
It could. That's why I started out saying that 6 to 9 months is probably about a good enough time to judge a team. But I mean, when we started Flipkart, Sachin, Vinny and I, we said, you get to 200 million exit, we'll all be great.
Yeah.
So obviously our next round itself was at 30, 40, and then the one after that was already more than 200, right? So in a year's time, we were valued more than 200. And the way they evolved, and obviously you were part of the journey later on, and then we brought in Kalyan and all of that. But good companies, good founders, I mean, that's the thing, right? So everybody will grow up very fast.
Yeah. And this, thinking about all the Accel portfolio company founders, I am not able to recall. I mean, see, Indian whole startup ecosystem is still evolving. The last 20 years has gone through a lot of ups and downs and a lot of things that you probably don't want to see in ecosystem in terms of founder integrity and governance issues and so on, but almost none that I can recall in the Accel portfolio company.
Yeah, fortunately, I mean, we have had one or two, but nothing at a very large scale. So I think a lot of it is just the same thing that we sit with these founders when they're just coming out of their first job or second job or whatever it is. And we kind of understand their mental makeup almost as well as they probably do.
Yeah.
So we kind of pick people that we like, and usually how we operate within Accel, so it sort of lines up very well.
And I'm guessing there is a lot of pattern matching in this business. And one is pattern matching can happen instinctively. You just see some patterns and intuitively, or it can be also explicit process where you almost write it down and make it as a cultural wisdom for the team. That's Accel team has also grown a lot.
Yeah.
Is there a deliberate process where you and the other partners Accel try to articulate ki, if we see this, run away from that. If we see something else, then try to embrace that situation.
No, we talk about, see, one good thing that we've been able to sustain at Accel is we make decisions, the early decisions. We let the guy who's closest to the company make that call. I mean, urban company, Abhinav was the guy who was closest, and I was probably one of the few people inside Accel who was relatively positive. And there were a bunch of people who thought services very hard to do, bringing quality, for the right reasons. But in the end, we gave the feedback to Abhinav and we told him, it's your call, right? If you want to do it, we'll back it fully. But, it's your call. You have to stand up and take that decision. And we are so lucky that he did. So we continue that kind of a culture even today. So if you go look at, the latest guys are Anag and Sarthak in Fund 7. We're in Fund 8 right now. Fund 7, they were still sort of, senior associates. So they were not allowed to write checks. but they will come and thump the table with one of the partners saying, if I had the money, I would actually do this company, and these are the reasons why. And with Anag, I have done a couple. So I've done Bridgetown research where he was actually the main guy. I took the board seat because he was still not allowed to, and now we have done a robotics company. So I'm still looking for my first one with Sarthak. But we continue to nurture people where they are at the front of it, they are making the decisions, and rest of Accel is actually backing them up. I think that's the right way to do VC.
So can you help, maybe our listeners, take inside Accel in this decision-making process? Kya hota hai, just what happens, let's say if you're looking at an early stage deal, and after first interaction, maybe somebody, Sarthak or Anag, is excited. How does process unfold? Like what kind of debates happen?
Yeah. So there are two levels of things. So very early checks. So let's say we do these, Accel Atom style checks, which are less than $1 million. But let's leave that out for a moment. Let's say we're doing a small early investment, so seed, let's say $2 million check. And there, Anag is completely convinced. And then what will happen is we'll form a group of 2 or 3 people. So he'll always have to have a buddy. So he can pick the buddy. And then depending on, what we think about
Buddy is some partner in the firm.
It could be a partner or a non-partner, but senior to him, obviously. So in this case, because he's kind of the root, the leaf level right now. So let's say he's picked me as the buddy. Then we together will go and get another third guy. And between the 3 of us, we'll do a lot of this debate. Saying, here are the pros and cons. We like the team, but this opportunity looks too small right now. Maybe they have to find an adjacency. We don't know what that will be. And things are moving fast. So, maybe they'll get the adjacency, maybe they'll get... So all of that debate happens within those 2-3 people. And then we get to the broader team saying, we are going to write this check. We are pretty convinced between the 3 of us, $2 million. We wanted you to give us the signal. So the team comes in, and then you've seen it's a fairly broad meeting now. So 12, 15 people, maybe sometimes even the non-partners and non-investing team also comes in. And at the end of it, we kind of ask for feedback, right? If the feedback is something like, I got this vibe that this is not the quality of founder that we should work with. Let's say that's not the case. I mean, it's on sort of the periphery of whether this can work, cannot work. Then we collect all that and we go back to that smaller team. And we try to decide, is this enough of a signal for us to not do this or continue to
But most of this feedback or signal is more qualitative versus people voting saying,
there is no voting at Accel on early stage. I mean, there's no voting on everything, but definitely nothing on early stage. It's mostly qualitative.
So everyone speaks their mind.
They'll speak their mind and go back to these 2-3 people. And in this case, because Anag is the guy who sourced the company, we'll probably tell him that, we all feel good, but you have to take the call.
Yeah.
Right. So we are trying to get them to become responsible for these things as early as possible. And if it is that other kind of feedback that this is not the quality of founder that Accel would want to, then we take it a lot more seriously. We'll go do ref checks and we'll come back with a lot more details about why we feel one way or the other.
And sounds like a lot of this debate is very subjective.
It is subjective.
The impression about the person, about the potential market, maybe other players in the can't be very science type of thing.
I mean, at least I haven't looked at too much of spreadsheets in the early stage at all.
Is there does someone even just for the sake of process present some kind of business plan in the early stage or no?
So what we try to do is some analysis of the market size. But, we probably wouldn't we'll say, in a good case, we'll get to $1 million ARR or something like that in 1 year, but which will...
So let me do maybe some live question because I'm just putting my Meraki Labs hat now.
Yeah.
We have an active company that we're incubating with Piyush.
Yeah.
And we are trying to, ask a question, what is a 5-year business plan? And there's a team that's working on it, वो actually useless है, नहीं करना चाहिए.
I wouldn't do it.
Okay, so make sure to share this part of the clip with Piyush. You also know.
Yeah. Well. In fact, I was going to, so as an aside, I pinged Piyush just after he had left. So he told me that, he's going to come back sooner than later because this is kind of almost getting there.
But where is what am I missing? Because I've been also around, this for 20 years. Why don't I know it? I mean, somewhere I know, but I feel कि वो process के लिए फिर भी करना पड़ता है. कुछ, let's say not only we may come pitch to Accel, so other VCs we feel will obviously show our pilot product and our more qualitative feel why this particular topic makes sense. But almost we assume कि थोड़ा expectation होता है कि कितना scale होगा and all that.
No, but you look at the 2 that we did with you, right? I mean, obviously there is
For
Mukesh.
those also we put something.
You put something, but in the end, what was the conversation around? Ki, acha, matlab, if you're going to go into this gym business, what age group is likely to be? So we are probably trying to figure out who's your customer, right? And have you thought about your customer long and hard enough that you know something about them that this product is going to be better than whatever status quo is, or it is completely going to change their life. So I think we are trying to understand what is your thought process about your customer. And that you don't have to put so much of data in it. You can just say, I stood in front of that particular store, and, like you did for Mitra, right? You went for the Bharat Darshan, and you stood in front of these stores, and at lunchtime.
I burned my hand trying to print on a mug. So
that was the previous version, but just before that Mitra story. So we would love to hear that, right? Where is your connect with the customer? And why do you feel that customer has a gap, and then you can fill that gap? So a lot of the questions will be around that.
So maybe I think this will be very relevant to a lot of especially younger first-time entrepreneurs. So let's say someone who's quit their job today and they're going to come and pitch you 6 months from now. So क्या करना चाहिए उस 6 महीने में? What should they do which will show you that this person has really done their homework, has something to say which is catching your attention?
So I would say, don't even spend 6 months, right? And it could be that there is this perception that if you get to a VC like Accel too early, you'll get judged negatively if you're not prepared enough. That is not our DNA. I mean, like I said, we are company builders as much as a lot of the people that we build with. So if you have an idea that you are excited about, you talk to 5 friends, and you feel like, here is an opportunity that actually requires some deeper thinking, you should come and talk to us. And maybe it will not fit into our scheme of things at that day. But if we like you, we like your thought process, we'll probably continue to be engaged till that end of 6 months. And then we can iteratively build out what it takes to convince us. Right? And it could be very different from convincing some other VC, because I've seen other people talk very differently or deal very differently. But at least for us, we are very open to engage early, and we don't take a final call saying ki, next time to milna hi nahi, right?
Got it.
So it is actually that iterative process which I feel that I learn a lot from. And so does a lot of people.
But how easy or difficult is for somebody, so just fresh out of a job to get a meeting with somebody at Accel? Because I'm assuming now you must be.
It's hard, but the way to do it is to get through to Mukesh or get through to Harsha or anybody. One of our investee companies, somebody senior there. If they send us an email saying, I know they have reached out to you, but do take a meeting with them, we'll almost definitely take that.
Okay, maybe other way to say it. Show your resourcefulness in reaching out to Accel. Agar Accel se meeting bhi nahi kar pa rahe hain aap,
so then there is a challenge. So you have to figure out another way to get there.
Right. Fair. Okay. So that's almost like a self-test.
Yes.
If I fail to get a meeting with Accel, kuch to gadbad hai. That I have to work at it. Just continuing with this, early stage. Where should somebody start? Focus on more on market or a problem or a team. Like, where should I, customer insight, what should I?
As an entrepreneur.
I'm going to start like a lot of people, at least for my case also, I was more clear about ki I want to be an entrepreneur. I did not have particular passion or interest, and hence you saw also for 4 years we tried everything under the sun.
Yeah.
So, and sometimes people may have a very deep passion about a problem. I think second time when I said Cure Fit, I was a lot more clear कि मेरे health में कुछ करना है. So in the first time you're not clear, where should you spend time?
Yeah, and I'll give you my example. When I moved back to India, there was this opportunity for me to be a part of early team of Daksh, again because of the Ashish Connect. But I almost thought ki, come back from Silicon Valley, services company kya banayenge, right? So I had this almost block in my mind that this is not a great place to be. And but when I actually did Tawant and all of that, I figured out that there could be a lot of interesting stuff building inside a services company as well, which was great because it helped us, be so active on Mu Sigma and things like that. Otherwise, I would have probably missed a lot of opportunities, right? So I would say we all evolve with the experiences that you gain and whatever reading that you do. So one is that, but for an early founder, I would say that there has to be a little bit of that, why now? Why am I uniquely capable of solving this problem? And of course, the customer piece, which we always go back to, which is, who's your customer? Why do they need this? Life is going on before, it might go on after. But what is this change that you're trying to imply on the customer's behavior that you think is, today ripe for disruption?
And does this become a bit of a handicap for a more technically oriented founder? Like, no? But I need consumer insight, which means I need to go out there, talk to people, but I enjoy coding.
But today what has happened is, thanks to these online capabilities and reach, go to YouTube and find 20 customers who are willing to talk to you, or go to LinkedIn and reach out to 10 people. See, in the end, as a founder, you'll have to build your network. Right? And some of it has to be people who understand your customers. So you have to solve that problem somewhere. So otherwise, you're probably not meant to be then you can be an individual performer in a great company. But to be a founder, somewhere you have to go seek that the truth about the problem statement.
So as a founder, at some point, you have to acknowledge the founder role is also a sales role.
It has to be, right? So you're building the vision of the company. How do you build the vision without knowing who the customer is? I mean, obviously, you have to build the team. How do you build the team without being able to sell to them what the vision is, right? So I think founder is this guy who wants to do multiple things. Probably not, doesn't need to be 99th percentile in everything, but needs to be able to kind of hold the fort and be the guy who's a good leader, showing direction and things like that.
Good. My next question is more about little later stage. So I think there's generally this, from what I understand from most funds, majority of the capital is deployed in the existing portfolio, because in some way they are known quantity. You work with the company for 1 or 2 years, you have all the metrics. Also, you know the people and so on. Is that a kind of big part of VC business, that to be able to, the first check is almost like to build a top of the funnel, but deploy majority of the capital to, when things are growing in.
So, it's not always possible, because let's say Flipkart, we did that first check, which was 800K. We did the second check, which was 1.5 million, and I had to fight internally because the valuation had moved so quickly that everybody was scared that, why are we putting more money at this higher valuation? So I put 1.5 million, and we never got a chance to put anything more because our fund was small and the valuation was clipping so fast that, not even another million went in. So 2.3 and whatever came in because of the Myntra acquisition. So I would say that you may or may not be able to catch all the companies that you want to catch in hindsight while they're evolving, because there'll be a lot of risks still left, and you may not have the answer that is this round more de-risked than the last round, and yet the valuation has gone up. So that is a framework that every fund has to build. So what kind of risk are we willing to take at every point? Because when you look back, it'll all look silly. Because at $1 billion, whether you did at 50 or 30 wouldn't have made a difference. But which is the one that will reach $1 billion, you don't know. Right? So what's the framework that you want to define, saying, here's a company, I put money at 10 and now it's at 30. I think maybe they have hired 3 more people, but they haven't really de-risked anything else. Am I willing to take that risk, and under what situation? So we are kind of thinking through that all the time. And that's a good art of how you be a VC. But on an overall basis, what we try to do is we have a ratio of the first check and follow-ons. So we typically, we used to try to make it as 1:1.5.
Per company or a global?
As a pool.
Okay.
Because you don't know which ones will do.
So 40% first check, 60% follow-up.
So assuming, so there is some, you hardly ever get to 100% deployment because of fees and all. But let's say if you deployed 90%, this should be in that ratio. Now, we have found it because, in Accel, one of the characteristics we have is we have a lot more partners, and all of them have the opportunity to make new investments. So we have now redefined that ratio to almost like 1:1.2.
Okay.
Because we are doing a lot more on the early stage side. Which is, I think, a good ratio. So between 1.2 to 1.5, if you can keep as a reserve, you can see enough evolution of the first checks to make the right calls.
What are the other, more, let's say, any few $100 million fund? How does a power law play out? Typically, and you pick a number, $200, $300 million fund. roughly what will be the portfolio size, number of companies, and roughly how many companies will help return the fund or the outsized return? Like how does the economics play out?
This is, again, I haven't looked into this recently, but when I used to, in the early days of Accel, look into a lot of data. So typically, in order to get a 3 to 4x fund, one company at least has to return the whole fund. So let's say 200 million. So one of your companies has to return 200. Then the next 3 or 4 will return you another 200. And then the tail will return you another 200. So that 3x means that one company has to be so big that your holding itself has to be 200.
And these three sets put together is what percentage of overall portfolio?
So generally that, between India and US, it's a little different. What I've seen is in India, no one does much of acqui-hire, right? So either you'll make it or you'll not make it. So a lot more companies die compared to, if you had a good team in the valley, somebody will pay the VCs 1x and take the company out, right? That doesn't happen. So I would say the top 40-ish% actually give you some return. And, maybe there's another 20% which is like sub 1x return. And the rest is like bottom 30% is all zero.
Got it.
And that out of that 40, there'll be a power law again. So maybe, 10 to 15%, 20% will give you most of the return, 90% of the return.
So a $200 or $300 million fund will be about roughly 30, 40 companies?
So what we have done is, except for that 64 million fund where we had 24, we have tried to be in that 30 to 40, all the subsequent funds.
Got it. So in the 30, 40 companies, one company needs to return entire 200 million.
Yes.
Another 3 or 4 put together, another 200 million. And then maybe
the rest of it
10.
will work it out. Yeah.
Got it. So, and how do, what does it mean? I guess from VC firm point of view, as long as that 3x return is happening, life is mostly good.
Yeah, it is actually, you're right up there in the top, 10, 12 percentile if you do a 3x.
But all the damage also involved, because company dying is a very painful process. Fortunately, I have not seen the actual death, but been very close to that. And there, like everything from founders to customers to employees to, and Accel as a whole may make money, but other investors who might have put money in those, they will lose money, etc. There's there's a lot of also carnage in the process.
Yeah. But is there a question?
Question is more, first, how much you even think about that? Or it's just, it's something that's a given, it's a risky business, damage will happen and just deal with it.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, at least the way I look at life is there are a few things you can control. And can I do the best I can with those? Everything else, there'll be some chance associated with it. I need to figure out where the best chance is for me to succeed and try to kind of double down there. And if I can't, I can't. Right? So that's how I look at life. I mean, there are a lot of, our good friend, Mr. Mukesh Singh, while he's doing great now, his first attempt was, didn't go anywhere. But neither he nor I lost faith in what we were doing. Right? So I think the best thing is if you have, so we could the market was outside of our control. I think the fact that he was a founder who was trying to fight a gun battle with a knife, you know what I mean, right? So there are people raising money all around, and he wanted to do it right and then go and raise money. I think maybe that was a little bit of a mistake for that time. But we didn't, unduly read too much into it. We thought, great guy, we should try. In fact, I was going to put money in his next company as well. That didn't happen for various reasons, but
I think he realized that अभी किसी से पैसा नहीं लेना है, अब जो करने खुद ही करेंगे.
No, I missed that window when we should have. He had actually agreed. We had a shake hand agreement.
Okay.
But we were between funds, so I couldn't pull down that money at that time.
But this phrase, become reasonably well known now. Failed founder is almost like a lot of people like, people who have tried entrepreneurship, you end up building some very unique skill set in that process. Have you seen that? What is your take on that? What 3-4 years of trying to make something work, but having failed at it, what does it do to you as a professional, as a potential founder in future?
See, I think in the end, it is about, there'll be a few companies which will race to glory. There are a few companies which will get annihilated very quickly. But the rest of it, there's this slow attrition or slow growth, right? So have you built enough, mental powerhouse to be able to deal with that on a day in, day out. I think that's what, separates out good from ugly in those situations, right? So if you feel like, here is this mission, like you were saying, right? You are not cut out to be doing anything other than being an entrepreneur. So even if this one fails, what will you do? You'll come back and do one more, right? So might as well try this a little longer. If there is still an opportunity left or a hope left, might as well try this longer. So I would say in the end, you have to get to that kind of an end state where you are not constantly thinking about the outcome. You're thinking about the journey and am I improving the state of my customer's life or whatever it is, that 3-4 things that you really believe in. If that is going well, then there is something to stay at. And of course, there's a difference between a venture style company and a non-venture style company. So you can keep doing it and build it slowly over a period of time. And it may not be interesting for a venture firm, which is fine.
So a lot of it is also, mental game, the whole entrepreneurial journey and a lot of self-discovery and so on. As a VC and a mentor, do you end up giving a lot of, life lesson gyan to people also, or is more about, product and market and team and so on, and rest the founders have to figure out somewhere else on their own?
No, I would say at least, the kind of people that I work with, let's say again, go back to our common friend, Mukesh.
Yeah.
It was life lessons, because, and it was both ways. I mean, it is never, even with you, right? So he would come back and say, to his classical example of Ashirwad Atta and, 15 kgs versus 5 kgs, how much weight has to be carried up the lift and all of that. And that was fascinating to me. That I had never imagined that I'll be sitting across somebody who is like so intelligent and solving this last mile problem, which is actually a very, very tricky, horrendous problem to solve. And if you can solve it, it's like very big for India, right? I think that appreciation started coming to me. So that was my learning. I think his learning was, I tried to push him to go out and fundraise sooner and all that. So he also felt that next time around, he didn't want to do a consumer company in India.
Yeah.
So I think that was the mutual learning that we got. I mean, one example, but I'm sure it's but it is, I think I helped him figure out that he's probably not cut out to be a consumer founder. And then he helped me figure out that, there are these tricky logistics issues, which forever in India will continue to rule the roost.
Got it. And just if you imagine, let's say 30-year-old person, smart, driven, ambitious, what attributes will make the person a better suited for a VC career versus entrepreneurial career? In both things are company building, and you mentioned Accel also. You think of yourself as a co-builder. Are there some inherent traits? Like, for example, I don't know. I have felt like somehow I'll not make a good VC. You can go into why, but do you see in people say like you hire a lot of very bright young people in Accel as well?
Yeah.
And or people can be both depending upon what stage of life they are in.
So people can be both. I wouldn't call myself a super successful entrepreneur.
You build from scratch.
I mean, this one, but it is building a venture fund, not a company. So previous 2 attempts at building a company, I, for good or bad reasons, it did not scale beyond a point. So I would say while it's possible to do both, I think that the difference is between breadth and depth. So if you truly love depth, and it could be depth of GTM, it could be depth of, yesterday we were doing SEO, today you guys are doing GEO or whatever it is. So, but it has to be at a depth where it can be scaled and we know where it will get stuck and go solve that problem and move it forward, right? I think that's the entrepreneur, right? They are like going into it like every day. It could be a 5% improvement, but every day we are trying to get a 1%, 5% improvement. I think for somebody who's more breadth, so I love to look at, global problems, but yet, I know that we'll have to start at a bottom level, but I see the buildings, not the steps. So I would then start looking at more of a VC career. And in people like me, I think we kind of were building steps and it sort of became a building over a period of time.
Got it. I think that's so just a little more self-awareness about what gives you more joy.
It's all about that. Basis. And, we could have started a company, Prashant and me, we would have probably been reasonably successful. But this is something that kind of we backed into, and we loved it and nurtured it.
And that aspect of VC business, ultimately you need money to invest. We talk a bit about that process also. It's just how easy, difficult. I'm guessing for Accel it's probably very easy now, but in general for younger funds, the whole process of getting money, returning money, especially maybe, and this I'm asking from the behalf of someone who doesn't know, probably have a perception that VC rich log hote hain, apna paisa laga rahe hain. Like just describe that process. Your paisa kahan se aata hai and how does the whole cycle work?
Yeah, and like any entrepreneurial journey, if you're starting a VC fund, you'll have to do whatever you have to do to get it off the ground. Yeah. Like that was Erasmic for us. And the way Erasmic worked was, just to give a little bit of history. So there are people like Ashish who had funded my startup, and there are a few people like that who had funded Prashant's startup. So we actually started collecting them together. So when we invested our money in Musigma, we went and told these guys that, here is something that we are doing. Ashish already knew about it, but some of the other guys. And I think maybe 10 or 12 of our friends actually put money with us. So we became like an angel group, so to say, right? And later on, we did 2 or 3 of these. And then we said, every time I have to go talk to 15 people and convince them, they'll ask 15 questions. Said, why don't we turn this into a fund? And that's when Mahendran sort of joined. So Erasmic Fund was kind of constituted at that time, 2005. And we said we'll do a very small fund. So we were saying 5 million. 50 people, the same set of guys who were already investors with us, plus their friends, 100K each. And that's what happened. I mean, there were 1 or 2 people who put 250 and a few people who put 50. So, but on an average, it was all 100K. So we got 50 people, $5 million. We were about to close. And when this, little bit of a windfall happened with us because Google started to look for funds in India and they came across us and all. So 5 grew to 10. Now, it was probably one of the hardest fundraisers that I've gone through, that building that 5. The 5 to 10 became automatic. Now, 3 years later, we were trying to do the same thing and we said this time 40 to 50 million. That's how we are deploying. So we'll do 40 to 50. And after working for 6 months, so, the dynamics was I was the one guy with a US passport. So I could travel everywhere. Prashant and Mahendran had an Indian passport. So they would put me on the flight and say, Tum jao, don't kill out. So I would go to Singapore, I would go to Hong Kong, I would go to US. And whoever would give me a meeting, I'll go meet with those guys. Right? So it was a sales job. And for the first time, I found out that maybe I can do a little bit of selling. So I did that for like 6 months. And we had commitments, like soft commitments, no signed papers yet, of maybe 15, 20 million. And then we started thinking, okay, this is going to take another 6 months. Okay, so is that worth it? And in the meantime, Accel was talking to us and they were getting excited and they wanted to work with us. And they basically, without saying so, they just said, you sign with us and next day you'll have your fund, pretty much. Okay, and which turned out to be true later. And then we were saying, what are we doing? We want to invest in companies. Why are we spending all this time to go raise this fund? These guys are really good and they're good at what they do, great references. So we should just go work with them. And that's the call that we took. And it changed everything. And the example was, I knew like we had probably 16 large LPs in the first fund and few smaller ones. I think 8 or 9 out of the 16 I would have met at least 3 times. And they would have said no. And then in the Accel meeting, they all came to Accel office. I was sitting there. And the first thing they said, Subrata, I know you. Can you give me higher allocation? So it was not a no, but can you give me more allocation now? Right? So it was all about somebody standing up and saying that these are credible guys and we are going to work with them and you know us. So therefore, these guys, right? So it was that switch, which is very important for a VC fund because you're not building IP, you're actually building reputation. And till you get to that reputation, you need to ride on other people's reputation.
So Accel brand boosted your reputation building
infinitely, right? I mean, between Erasmic and Accel, that boost was really, really important.
And fast forward to now, like raising money from LPs, mostly track record, you point to a track record.
So now it has become relatively, a lot easier. I'm sure every time there are 1 or 2 LPs who feel like, we have not done a great job, but 90% of the people feel like we have done a good job. and it's become relatively simple.
As VC, and also even going back to your Silicon Valley days, you have seen like many of these technological shifts, and there's one that's happening. It probably seems like it's probably biggest of all time, as well as probably hardest to understand. Is this changing? How within Accel you were thinking about investment? This because AI just keeps getting stranger
stronger
more
and stronger,
powerful by the day. Like they're not. At least I'm struggling to really map older mental models to what's happening with this AI. And if ever I feel like an urge to map to something older, I feel like maybe that's some of a handicap. It just seems so different. For example, the very little opportunity to build IP outside of LLM now that we have never seen in software business before. You write great software, you have an IP you can protect. But what do you do here?
No. So it's something that is really, so within Accel India, and I'm sure all other funds, we have now almost 60% of our people are probably chasing just AI related companies, and those are global companies, right? So we are looking at the YC cohorts and all the Indian founders who have gone there, and as much as we are looking at all the Indian founders who are here. So it is moving very fast. And in fact, we were at like a year ago, I met with the YC, the guy who runs YC now. So he was telling me, Gary Tan. So he was telling me that, the last 20, 30 years, we were building wrappers around databases. Next 20, 30 years, we'll build wrappers around LLM. I mean, it was a very simplistic message, but maybe it'll be true, maybe not. But it is probably currently what we are trying to do is wrappers around LLMs, and that's what you are also saying.
But at least database wrappers were very complicated because UI had many layers and so on. A lot of business logic needs to be written. These wrappers there's still innovation to be done in the user interface and domain knowledge, but they're relatively shallower.
They're shallower. So I agree with you. And then the real thing is in this agentic thing, right? So which is it is almost like a human, but it is a codified human. And then, as we know, in any given human job, there's somebody who executes at 99th percentile and a lot of people at 50th. So the first level of opportunity is to bring everybody to that 98, 99, right? And how much, of data and sophistication do you need to get there? That could create a lot of companies, right? With every vertical. So I'm looking at it as that initially, which is you take each of these human-centric jobs, which are going to become agents, and can you do it at the level of the top 10%? People were.
And somewhere, I don't know, like again within Accel, are you noticing that there is a relatively lesser number of AI startups in India compared to West? Unlike the previous waves where there's so many Indian specific problems that entrepreneurs were solving here, even if the idea was inspired by the West, but the solutioning was very, very indigenous to India. AI, and including if you look at the recent YC cohorts, the representation of India is falling and the center of, gravity is shifting to Bay Area. Is that...
No, I completely agree, because a lot of these things, if these are wrappers around LLMs, everybody in the globe can build these wrappers, right? So if you to get a little bit of differentiation, it's a GTM differentiation, and then you need to be where most of the money is, right? So where are your customers, and you need to be next to them. So if the GTM differentiation makes you stand out, only then you can probably survive the rainy day.
You were asking me this question before, but I'm kind of same version of that. I'm going to ask you is, are there mental models emerging for, navigating next few years for, from deploying capital and building companies point of view?
Yeah. The one that I like personally was this whole services plus AI thesis, which I think, because India has a natural advantage in, let's say, consulting or services, what are some of the things that you can build which automates, not everything, but most of it, right?
Sure.
And let's say, we've invested in this company called Bridgetown, which we were talking about. So that's one such example. Maybe one or two more where we are trying to take sort of a consulting style assignment and build some technology which makes it easier to deliver that service.
Good. Just last question, Subrata. Just coming back to where we started this whole early stage. So you you are, you've had a phenomenal journey at Accel, and but you mentioned that you still like early stage. So what does your engagement with early stage now look like compared to some of your earlier part of? And early stage also means deploying a lot less capital. So partly also VC business about the larger capital to deploy, you're literally putting more money at work. But early stage you can't put a lot of money at work. You have to wait.
So I don't look at how much money I have deployed, but how much return did I create, right? So that's probably, and given that I'm not a career VC, it's probably easier for me to look at it that way. Whatever I found more natural, but truly I still love, like I said, all these 30 plus companies that I have called on myself. And maybe except for one, everything else was starting ground zero.
Yeah.
Right. So I love them because, one is, I think I probably would have been an entrepreneur if not this. So it's like my age-old dream of being as close to entrepreneurship as possible.
Yeah.
And what better than two smart people who are trying to change the world and solve a big problem. So I still love those. And then I think that given now the diversity of companies that I've done, so, obviously being early at Accel gave me this canvas where I have seen, a lot of health tech, obviously seen a lot of e-commerce, logistics because of that, payments. And these are all like pillars in themselves, right? So if I go back and look at what I have seen go by, I think I can relate to most companies in a very natural way, in which I think the founders also sort of appreciate that I can probably bring to bear sort of one or two nuances here or there, which maybe they have missed because they're running too fast. So that's a great partnership. I feel like if I meet with somebody, I try to meet the really early companies once a month at least, right? So they have moved enough that I can start using my experience to probably help them a little bit more and so forth. So it sort of is a very good dual relationship where I'm constantly learning from them, and hopefully once in a while I'm helping them kind of move the needle.
I think I've seen you up close doing a lot more than helping once in a while, especially navigating difficult times, which every single, especially early stage companies go through. Part of early stage is also a lot of uncertainty about what to build. And I'm sure like a lot of entrepreneurs brings ideas to you.
Yeah.
But do you have your own ideas? Like as we speak, you have few things in mind. I really wish someone ought to build this product.
So we always do, right? And so I the challenge is, it is very hard to take your ideas and give it to another entrepreneur. I mean, an entrepreneur is an entrepreneur because they want to change the world in their field of view, right? They don't necessarily align totally with your field of view. So as we speak, I'm trying something,
okay,
which is like.
Is there an invitation to the listeners you want to see, like prospective entrepreneurs, try building this, something that you are able to share?
No. I don't want to do that, but it's like too broad a set of things to. Because I would say most entrepreneurs today will probably start focusing on AI related startups. So then it is like you said, getting either a GTM right or getting a nuance of the business right is probably important to at least build a little bit of a runway that so that you can compete with the rest of the world. So that has to be what they see, not what I see.
Maybe one final question. This entrepreneur VC ecosystem is now 2 decades old in India.
Yeah.
What are your hopes and expectations next decade in terms of continued evolution? What are the few things you would love to see happen in next 10 years?
Yeah, I think, see, one thing is, the amount of capital that keeps coming into India is somehow a combination of reality and fad. And the fad happens because, something happened in China or something happened in US. I don't think we have yet found a balance as to what's the right amount of capital that needs to go into India. And sometimes I feel that it is inadequate. And sometimes it is like, drinking from the hose pipe, right? So how do we create a balance is something that I've been thinking about. So we need to go tell the world, what are the actual opportunities in India? And therefore, this is the amount of venture capital money that we need. And if you're in that 80th, 90th percentile, we are okay. And 110 percentile, we are okay. But if it is 200 or 50, then we are not okay. So that's probably something I would love to see, coming from our part of the world. And then, of course, truly global companies coming out of India, which we have been hoping
Is something
for.
holding it back, like especially from the lens of deep tech? Is there some natural handicaps we need to fight?
There are. I mean, you look at the number of GPUs that we have been using in India, right? Abysmally low. And how do you kind of solve that problem? So China somehow has figured it out. I don't know how they have, but we are still very low compared to US. So how do we solve some of those problems? And I think talent density in India is like really, really high quality talent is still very sparse. So both of these we need to,
So maybe you mean very highly skilled and trained talent.
Yes.
Like caliber wise, there is infinite supply.
But to be able to solve let's say a ML problem at very high fidelity, the number of people in India is probably
building an LLM from scratch, which is a desperate need.
A desperate need, but I mean, I don't know if it's still a need because the world has moved on. So
if you're prepared to pay rent for next 20 years, then yeah. But which I guess that's probably much a given now.
Yeah, it is very hard to reverse that. And then a little bit of can you sort of leapfrog and look at very specific Indian problems as well. So let's say some of the stuff that we are building, we invested in this eVTOL company because of the congestion in India. So Prateek went and put money into this. It's actually a very interesting team. 3 people who are actually in Germany. One of them, German guy. They've all moved to Bangalore. And they're building the company out of India. So it's actually pretty fascinating. So some of these, we need to take some of these forward-looking jumps as well.
eVTOL, for people who have not heard of electric vertical takeoff and landing, which is Bangalore needs more desperately than...
I mean, every city in India. So he has this comparison about China and India, the population density and all of that. So I think we would have needed it 10 years ago. Right. But it's a tall order because you not only have to get the aviation right, but you have to go work with the government to figure out how to fly these things within the city.
Yeah, from my perspective also, I think next 10 years, if there's a truly world-class and really cutting-edge technology company can come out of India, I think that will be next natural evolution. It's going to be an uphill task. I don't think it's given.
But given that ISRO is doing well, there are a few places where we can kind of hang our hat. So maybe we need to look at more such investments into those kinds of areas and how do we kind of align multiple VC firms to do it. So that could be, if we are already 98th percentile in something, it is probably better to push that than. So services and something like this are 2 areas that probably might have.
Something to look forward to. But yes, I just want to thank you for taking the time. I think finally it was a long overdue episode, but
sorry about that.
No. You have done an incredible job in, I think, really, you have contributed pretty directly in creation of this whole ecosystem, which has come a long way from $10 million fund now to, billions and tens of billions of dollars of,
$3 billion under management at Accel.
Only Accel, but in even larger ecosystem. Because Accel success stories have also paved the way for many other entrepreneurs and many other VCs.
Yeah, I would love to believe that. Hopefully some of it is true.
Brilliant. So keep up what you're doing. And thank you.
Thank you. And, between you and me, it has been a wonderful long association. So we'll continue to work
and
on
you
that
want to just started. So I think you have a long way to still have to face each other.
Thank you.
At SparX, we aim to bring to you stories of exponential impact. We share in-depth analysis of what goes behind success stories. If you find our conversations interesting, you can join us by subscribing to our YouTube channel. You can also listen to SparX on Spotify, Apple Podcast, or any other audio platform of your choice. If you have any suggestions on who we should invite or what topics we need to cover, just let us know in the comments. We are always listening, looking for ways to improve, and keep getting better as we go along.